Well, I'm so excited to have Linda with us today and talking about how to do wealth investing and how to manage your money from a crypto point of view as well. And Linda Jones and I have shared the stage at the XRP conference in Vegas a couple years ago. We've talked since. So thank you very much for joining the show.
Oh, it's great to see you again, Clinton. My pleasure.
So tell me, it's been a dramatic year in 2024. Cryptos went up in value significantly. Gold is at an all-time high. And we have a new president that's throwing around a lot of suggestions about that are going to radically change the investment environment. There's talk of substantial more income in tariffs. The Doge is slashing government expenses. They're coordinating their efforts to drive down the interest rates because there's a refinancing and we're at debt ceiling limits. It's chaotic. Trump's even talking about slashing some or all of the income taxes. So, how do you interpret this? How's an investor supposed to think about this turbulent financial environment? Is it still a good time to invest? And how should one view that investing scenario?
That is a great question. I think it is a great time to invest. We have had a bumpy start to this year. I mean, after the election, the markets took off and just, started to go straight up. And we had a lot of speculation. And we've pretty much pulled back from all of that, retraced it all, and gone down a little bit more. So now we're after the 10% mark, which puts us in official correction territory. So the thing is, I think President Trump wants to get a lot of the bad news out early in his administration, definitely before midterm voting. So he's starting early. And so he's getting, the government waste cut out. He's getting the bad news that he's dealing with. Now we're dealing with war, actually, at this particular point in time. There's a lot of the negative stuff that had to be dealt with, he's dealing with upfront and quickly. And I think ultimately the decisions that he's making are going to bring interest rates down, bring energy costs down, bring inflation down. And that's really good for the economy so that when we get to peace talks, which they're just starting to actually announce today, some advancements in the area of peace, that once we can get some of that finalized, and we see lower inflation and lower interest rates, I think the economy is really going to start to boom in the second half of the year. So this was all necessary stuff. And I also think we're kind of being programmed a little bit to maybe put some of this on the blockchain. So it ties into some of our crypto pursuits, because I think the Doge is making the point that there's a lot of government waste because it's not transparent. We don't know where the money's going. But if this were on a blockchain, we would know. And so I think they're sort of preparing us that may be the future.
That would be great to see that way. To get transparency back into government is to put the people in power and do that for the budget, do that for voting, things like this, that we can restore the confidence in the government. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's where they're going with this. I mean, Elon was asked about that and he tweeted, yes, that would be a great thing. And so I kind of get the feeling that that's the direction they're headed in. But as far as investments, I mean, profitability is good. I don't see that we're on target for any kind of a recession. I know some people are trying to bring recession into the conversation. I just don't see it. The economy is still really strong. We have positive GDP. For recession, you need 2 quarters consecutively of negative GDP growth. I just don't see that. So, I think that's off the table, but I think we're going to have lower interest rates. And if we can get that, then we're going to have housing respond to that. We're going to have the stock market and crypto respond positively. I think, like I said, in the second half of the year, I think things are really going to rebound nicely. And this is a really good buying opportunity.
So tell me, when you talk to your clients about how to build their wealth portfolio, how do you see that breaking down right now? What are the sweet spots you think someone should be thinking about as they're looking to invest their investment money?
Yeah, well, I deal a little bit differently than traditional financial advisors. So I have something called the Be Wealthy and Smart VIP experience, which is me advising as if I were a newsletter writer. So I advise to the group, and we have different portfolios that they can invest their own money in. So I don't invest their money. And I don't do one-on-one counseling for people, but we do have portfolios with ETFs. So we have stock ETF portfolios, so they can use that for their 401k or just a regular stock investing. And that was, originally my great source of compounding to build wealth was the stock market. In the first book I wrote, it was all about, how stocks can provide 10% average annual returns year in and year out. And that was great. And when I was on Wall Street, that was everything. That was the best way to compound your money. But then we started investing in private equity, and I wrote my second book about crypto. And so part of our portfolio also has 7 different private equity companies that we're invested in. Some of those are in AI, some of those are crypto related, blockchain related. And then we also have 14 different cryptocurrencies that we invest in, although our favorite and predominant investment is in XRP. But we use all 3 of those areas to build wealth. What's been really interesting, Clinton, is over the last, several years, crypto has actually outperformed stocks and outperformed private equity. And, the private equity market has been a little bit stalled and slow. Not many companies have been able to go public. And so we hope to have a more active market this year. But it's really been the cryptos that have provided, hundreds of percent returns in some cases over the last few years. And that's been really exciting. And I do think we're repeating the 4-year crypto cycle right now, which is like we had in 2017 and we had in 2021, which means that this is going to be a particularly strong year for crypto performance. And so we're really excited because that's where we think the best performance is going to be, is in cryptocurrencies.
Well, cryptos are, to be honest, they've always been categorized as a speculative asset in that as a result, because of high swings, it's always been relegated to small positions. But a lot of crypto investors say, I would far better risk those swings than being managed out of my profit through mutual funds and that sort of thing. How is your perspective on how much one should, maybe another way to look at this is a lot of cryptocurrencies are at significant highs, even Bitcoin, even though the market's had a pullback, still at significant highs, XRP as well. Is there still room to go up this year?
Absolutely. So we look at about 3 to 5% of our portfolio to be in cryptocurrency originally. So when I started recommending it back in 2020, we were buying XRP at 25 cents. And I'd say, okay, just do a little bit, just do $100, just try it. And so we would kind of have people tiptoe in. And then I said, okay, now we can do 3% of your investable assets. Let's look at that. And now, then we moved up to 5%. And then what happened was it started growing so much, we're almost up 10x from where we started investing, that has become more of people's portfolios. And so they're more comfortable with it. They like the returns that it gives. And we joke that, one day in crypto is a year in the stock market, right? Because the S&P 500, it took a year to get a 24% return last year in the S&P 500. That's a day in crypto, right? We know that crypto can
Yes.
in one day or a week, whatever, but it's so volatile. But we also know that we're just in the first inning with crypto. And so we believe that we are basically going to be moving all of traditional finance onto this blockchain platform in the future. And we think that XRP and the XRP ledger have a big role in that. And so that's why that is our predominant crypto choice. But we think we're still so early that the wealth building potential is better and bigger than anything I've ever seen in my years in financial services. It's the most exciting opportunity, which is not only looking forward, but looking at actually what's already happened. So when I wrote my crypto book, 3 Steps to Quantum Wealth, it was because I'd never seen compounding returns like we've seen in crypto. And of course, Bitcoin being the first, it had, the best track record of any asset class ever in history. And since then, we've had, a lot of other cryptos come after Bitcoin. And some of those have had stronger performance numbers. But these numbers are so much bigger and stronger average annual returns than you see in stocks or real estate or even private equity. It's really exciting because this is a unique wealth building opportunity that I think is going to continue into the future. But what it's done already is just spectacular. mean, people don't realize in 2017, $100 invested in XRP became $45,000 because XRP at that time was 0.006. And then it became $3.85 that year at the peak. So, I mean,
Mm.
we've never seen wealth building opportunities like this. And that's why it's so different and so worthwhile for people to deal with the long learning curve to learn about crypto because it is a steep learning curve. But once they find out about it, then they get excited. Once they're in it and invested in it for a while, then they love it and they actually enjoy it more than their stocks. So
That's good. That's exciting. Hey, here in 2025, with the Trump administration coming in, it's just sending off all sorts of positive signals to the crypto investment market. They've, right now we're waiting on the Treasury Department to finish a 3-month regulatory review, recommendations on how to go forward regulatory wise. But we've already seen the beginnings of it. They've really shut down a lot of the SEC harassment, choke point 2.0 activities. We're seeing a relaxation on the commodities regulation, and we're seeing the creation or establishment of a crypto AI czar, to drive business there. And Trump has made it very clear he wants the U.S. to be the #1 place in the world you go for starting crypto investing and AI investing. So a lot of exciting things to hear, but of course, we want to see how it plays out. And also there's discussion of, how do we change the tax code to support that? I think one of the biggest things that was announced just last weekend, they had a crypto summit and they announced that there was going to be the establishment of certain currencies. I believe 5 currencies would be a part of a strategic reserve for the U.S. Now, I've heard of the U.S. having a strategic petroleum reserve and a strategic gold reserve. Not really, I guess I'm not really 100% sure what that means, whether there's congressional involvement to make that happen. How do you interpret this talk? Where do you see that going?
okay, well, there was a lot in there. So first, I want to say that the AI and crypto connection is very strong, and it has been said that whoever controls AI, and especially AI in the world, will control the world. And that's why it's important for America to be the leader and the leading country. And so crypto fits into AI there. The AI and crypto, or the crypto summit that they had a couple of weeks ago at the White House, was after they had announced the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the digital asset stockpile, which are actually 2 different things. So the strategic Bitcoin reserve is from forfeited or confiscated Bitcoin. I think already now the government has 200,000 Bitcoin that they have confiscated from, I think, mostly criminals. And so that's going to go into the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And they've talked about maybe buying some more Bitcoin, but they're not going to do that unless it's revenue neutral or doesn't cost taxpayers any more money to do so. Then on the other side, you have the digital asset stockpile, which is where he mentioned XRP, Solana, and Cardano. And that also is going to be from anything confiscated or forfeited. Now, some people are of the opinion that it might relate to the fine that Ripple has to pay because, as you said, all those cases have been dismissed now except the Ripple case. And so the Ripple case was one in which the judge found that there was a circumstance years ago where Ripple sold XRP directly to institutions. And so the SEC threw this lawsuit and said, you're acting like a security, and they wanted a $2 billion fine. The judge came back with a $125 million fine, but that hasn't been paid yet. And that whole thing, Ripple actually won the suit, and it was found that they are not a security, but the fine is still sitting there, and that has to be decided. So is that fine going to go into the digital asset stockpile? We don't know, but that could be something that we may see in the future. We're wondering about that. Or is it, going to be assets from somewhere else that come in there? So it's going to be interesting to follow that. I think that these, the stockpile and the reserve are because digital assets are where we're going. It's going to be the next form of money in terms of a digital dollar. And Ripple plays a role in that with RLUSD, which is the stablecoin, which is a version of a dollar. And so that's really exciting that they're working on that. And I think all those pieces actually fit together.
I wonder if Ripple pays the fine. What if they pay it in cryptocurrency and it goes into the stockpile reserves?
I kind of speculated, well, I've said that may happen. It could happen. I don't know if it will happen, but we'll see. I mean, it's a possibility for sure. So that could be exciting because that could start that stockpile and, could be worth a lot more over time.
Now, one of the things that Eric Trump has said at various crypto scenarios is he has hypothesized that his father would introduce legislation that would have, and there's two sides to this question, basically proposing that there might be 0% capital gains tax on US based blockchains and crypto projects. So we can talk about the capital gains tax separately, but what do you see as, because I think back in like 2017, the rage was DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations, that no one country, no one person could ever really own a cryptocurrency. And now this sort of discussion coming from Eric Trump, and I'm sure it's widely circulated inside the administration, is like to have US-based blockchains. It kind of goes against that independent notion that we had in cryptocurrencies. What do you see that, what is it that Eric's talking about in terms of US-based blockchains and cryptocurrencies? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, well, they are going to define what that actually means, but I think some of the definitions that they're looking at are companies that were started here in the United States, and then there's also going to be a pathway for companies that weren't started in the U.S. but maybe are now in the U.S. or have done other things with the U.S. that would give them a pathway to become a U.S. crypto. So that's kind of
Mhm.
interesting, and Congress has to define what all of that is and create the laws around it. Because right now we don't really have a legal definition around what cryptocurrency is or digital asset is. But I think what he's saying is that President Trump wants to make this country the crypto capital of the planet, of the world. And so he's doing everything he can to support US companies who are pro crypto and who are providing crypto technology. Whereas in the past, the prior administration was against that and was actually, debanking people who were involved in crypto. Some of the crypto executives were debanked, couldn't have a banking account anymore just because they were involved in crypto. They were throwing lawsuits at companies. Now, all those have just been dismissed. But in the prior administration, there were multiple lawsuits against Coinbase and other blockchain companies such as Ripple that started blockchains and was hampering them from moving forward to the point where they could only really build their company outside the US and couldn't really, do much with it inside the US. And so I think they're trying to remove all those barriers. They're trying to be pro crypto. They're trying to be do everything to make the American crypto companies that are the largest by market cap, which happen to be, XRP and Solana and Cardano, and Ethereum is there, and of course Bitcoin is the big granddaddy. But there's just this support for U.S. crypto companies to try to get them to have more advantages and to sort of make it a little easier for them to do business in the country. And I think that's good for us. And this is a transition that we're going through, that I think we're going to get everything of value tokenized and put on blockchains. And we're going to see, financial assets move around on blockchains. And they've talked about the Internet of Value, which is the next phase, which we didn't get when the internet was created. We got communication, moving in cyberspace, but we didn't get value moving on blockchain and on the internet. And so now it's going to be something that is important not to tax, because you don't want to, pay for a coffee with a crypto and then have to pay tax on that or have to keep track of all these transactions to pay tax. You don't pay tax on your dollar if you spend dollars and the dollar goes up or down that day. So it's the same thing with crypto. We need those crypto laws to basically say it's a currency, and therefore we don't have to have taxes on spending it or using it.
It'll be very exciting. I mean, there's so much opportunity to shift. Actually, the ability to shift from to finance 2.0, where you're moving away from a currency-based economy. This could be really revolutionary. And I think it's great that Trump wants to do it. It'd be interesting to see how he does it.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting really with stable coins. We're starting to get stablecoin legislation this year. It's called the Genius Act, and Congress is moving it through. It's bipartisan, so we're going to get that done this year. And the good news is they're going to define what a stablecoin is, and basically who can issue them. But they're a digital dollar that is in existence, and of course, Ripple has a version, and Circle has a version, and Tether also has a version. And what we're learning is that they have to be backed dollar for dollar with treasuries, and they have to be audited, and they have to be issued by a certain size company, or if they're issued by 10 billion plus, I think then they're under one regulator, and if they're smaller than that, then another. But this could be really important for us, because if we issue stable coins and they have to be backed by treasuries, that means we have a new fresh buyer of treasuries, which means that the more that a stable coin would have to buy treasuries, that would bring interest rates down on treasuries. And so that's what the Treasury Secretary has said, is that stable coins can really be an important part of bringing interest rates down for our country, because they're going to create demand for treasuries, and therefore interest rates won't have to go up to try and entice people to invest in treasuries. They can actually drop because there's a new huge demand for them. So it all fits together, and it's really exciting.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So tell me, what if you were to give advice to someone as they're looking for, because in terms of crypto markets high, you said it might peak here in 2025. We're already part of the way into that. Is it still good time to buy into crypto this year, or would you suggest that they wait for the 4-year cycle in 2026, 27 when those valuations drop?
Great question. I think we're still in the first inning of crypto, so I think we're very early in investing, and so this is a great time to get in. Even though we have volatility and we have fluctuation, we have had a sharp pullback this year. So we are seeing valuations lower than they were earlier, which it's always good to buy the dips, right? So I think that's a really good time to buy. And then I don't even think we've really started to see all the catalysts kick in. I did a podcast on the Be Wealthy and Smart podcast about 10 catalysts that are going to boost the price of XRP. Things like the end of the lawsuit, or the SEC either throwing it out or paying the fine or whatever they're going to decide on that, but getting that settled for once and for all so that Ripple can move on. That's one example, but maybe no tax on US cryptos, as you've mentioned. That might be another catalyst for it. There's the Genius stablecoin bill, so legislation getting passed. That's another catalyst. There's all these positive things that are set to happen this year. So I think those haven't been seen yet, and we have a lot of things that can really create momentum that are really going to keep the market going up this year for, I think, in a strong way. So we haven't really seen that begun too much. So I think it's a great time to buy.
You mentioned some of the tax law changes. Donald Trump has proposed a lot of different things. I think it basically hints at it. My perception on that is that he is trying to reduce the U.S. dependence on income tax by, first of all, through Doge, really cutting all the waste out of the budget. So we really don't need to raise as much money for the federal government to pay for the services that they're committed to. Secondly, the tariffs will bring in a large source of income to the point where I think he feels that he can significantly reduce the level of income taxation, both at the individual and corporate level, and how he's already hinting at certain things. We just been hearing just this week talk of trying to target so that people who make under $150,000 a year would not be paying taxes. That's an interesting number to throw out. I think for a crypto investor, one of the things that was shocking to me was when Donald Trump or Eric Trump proposed a 0% capital gains tax on cryptocurrency. And I think ultimately Donald Trump has said he wants to get rid of income tax altogether, but I don't think he can do that this year. I think that would have to be next year once he's proven some of the savings in Doge, the income from tariff. If there actually was a 0% capital gains tax on US based blockchain projects and cryptocurrencies, my feeling is that that would instantly create a business demand for US companies to tokenize virtually every asset in the world, not just crypto assets, but stocks, bonds, real estate, cruise ships, everything gets tokenized. Because then what happens is that the ownership of these assets have moved into the US. People would not be paying capital gains tax when they buy and sell these assets. And then people, foreigners, when they can buy and sell these assets in the US, the US is basically the biggest tax haven in the world for non-US people. So these assets could be changing hands on a crypto level, yet without generating taxable events that are visible to other government and tax authorities, such that people wouldn't be paying taxes on these capital gains tax. So this would have a significant shift ownership. This would certainly make the U.S. the #1 crypto capital of the world. It would also establish, as you were kind of alluding to, the whole Finance 2.0, where all traffic is happening on a blockchain base. We're looking at, millions of times more crypto transactions happening than we are currently seeing right now. And I think you pointed out correctly, it's just impossible to track those capital gain assets. That whole structure probably becomes unworkable altogether. And capital gains represents, depending upon the year, roughly between 10 and 14% of the income that the IRS brings in each year. So, I think the tariffs are expected to get rid of a lot of that. So I think, or to compensate for that. So I think there's a possibility of it. It'd be challenging to get it through Congress. That would be actually the interesting thing to see. But we could be looking at a whole new taxation regime and economy in next year, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you made some great points there. And there is a bill in Congress to end the IRS and to end income tax. So it's in there. We don't know when that's going to get passed or approved, but it's started its little journey. So we'll see. But I just think that if they're going to tokenize all these things and get to a blockchain level, we're going to have a different tax structure. That makes a lot of sense to me. And he's trying to do the tariffs to have the external revenue service and get rid of the internal revenue service. And maybe I think have a flat tax on certain items. And I think that the $150,000 level is a level that he chose to probably help the middle class, since the middle class has all but disappeared. I mean, people can't even afford to buy homes anymore because the money's just really all traveled up to the 1%. And so I think it's, as a country, we're in desperate need of trying to revamp the middle class and help them. And I think that is a good first step if he can get that done.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how it's done. I mean, if he can get a law passed, and where such as the way I would do it if I were his shoes, I would get the law passed where I brought the tax rate all the way down to 0 at those lower brackets. Because then you have an immediate benefit to the citizen in his W-2, just immediately less taxes taken out. He immediately has a pay raise, if you will. It remains to be seen whether we still have withdrawals for Social Security and Medicare, which those are significant funding items. But income tax itself could go to 0 in these areas. 47% of Americans pay no income taxes at all. They may pay into it, but then they get compensation through child tax credits, earned income tax credits, and a variety of other credits that offset and sometimes cause them to have significant refunds. It's a form of welfare. So really a lot of people are not being taxed at all. So for him to bump it up to everybody making under 150,000, what is that? A husband and wife each making 75,000. That is in the middle income space, lower middle income space, and that's uh, very possible. The challenge, I think, is he has to go for eliminating the income tax on, if he's going to eliminate on capital gains, here's the problem. 75% of all capital gains tax are paid by the upper 1%. That's so, you can already hear Democrats saying, no, it's a tax break for the wealthy. 90% of all capital gains tax are paid by the upper 25%. All right. So how do you justify that? Well, you justify that by eliminating tax on everybody else at the low end. I think that's how you get that to happen. It'll be interesting to see that drama play out. So interesting. So it'd be very interesting because another area that this would change, that you would be interested in, is it would virtually eliminate 401ks and IRAs. They would just completely go by the wayside. Why do you need a tax deferred account if you're not being taxed, right? So all those just disappear. All those investment incentives and all the whole industry that's focused on the complex IRA regime, it just goes away. And that's probably good, because I kind of think that IRAs and 401ks are mechanisms that the government uses to keep people poor, because they're not really allowed to save enough money that they would really need for retirement living. So,
Yeah.
But anyhow, that's my personal bias there. Sorry about that.
Well, I agree.
Hey,
I agree with you. Yeah.
So hey, it's really interesting the way you look at the economy and investing. How can people, what services do you offer that people might want to sign up for? How can they reach you and learn more about your offerings?
Sure. Well, I have a podcast I do 3 times a week called Be Wealthy and Smart. It's on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can go to my website at lindapjones.com/podcast. And all my 1,480 podcasts are there. I've been doing it over 10 years and
Wow.
10 million downloads. And I've written 2 books. So there's my first book right there, You're Already a Wealth Heiress, which is on the list of all-time best wealth books by Book Authority. It's a general finance book, an investment book. And then the second book was about crypto investing and how to get started, what cryptos to invest in, why this is the investment opportunity of our lifetime. So you can just sign up for my newsletter at lindapjones.com and get my free email once a week too.
Very good. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having you on our show today, and I look forward to talking again.
Thank you, Clinton.